Hello! Hi, it's Kimmy. How are you doing? Welcome to my first video, which I'll be talking about 6 things I wish someone would have told me before majoring in fashion design and burning a hole in my parents' pocket. So, before getting into it, here's a little backstory on how I got into fashion, because this is my first video and I want you to feel like you know me and are friends with me before I get into the more serious part of my video. But if you want to skip to the deets, I'll put a timestamp for you to navigate around easier. So basically, when we were in high school and the teachers made us fill up those logbooks with our ambitions yearly, fashion design and veterinarian were always my top 2 choices every single year. But it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to fashion school right after I graduate from high school and I'm going to make it big and open my brand and walk out at the end of my runway wearing a plain t-shirt. It wasn't anything like that. At the back of my mind, I also considered veterinarian and culinary arts since I really liked cooking. But I wasn't smart enough to be a vet, and cooking was kind of like a hobby and I wasn't sure if I wanted it to be a career. So after I graduated from high school, I went to those education fairs where there were a bunch of colleges in their booths trying to promote their courses to us. And when I first entered, there was this design school that handed me their brochure, and the lecturer of fashion talked to me, and after 15 minutes, I was sold. There was no point for me to keep walking around because I already made up my mind, and after listening to him explain the course to me, even though I didn't quite understand what draping and drafting was, but I liked the sound of it. And that is how I got into fashion without really knowing what I was getting myself into. So now that you know how I got into fashion, let's just get on with the video. I'm going to divide my points into 2 categories. The first would be the experience and the second would be finance. So let's get started with the first main point, the experience. Number 1. Not all fashion designing jobs are just pure designing. I went into fashion with a very naive thinking that once I graduated from college, I could easily find a pure designing job, which now I know is not easy to come by, especially in Asia. Most fashion jobs that I found ties designing and merchandising together, which really wasn't what I expected at all. I personally love designing and the whole process that goes into it, especially when I started working and to see my designs being mass produced and sold either locally or internationally. But I wasn't really a fan of the merchandising aspect of the job. I guess to actually land in a pure designing job, I would really need to work for a big company where there are set departments in place, which is not common, where I'm based. Not all fashion jobs are as glamorized as the media make it out to be. You always watch those movies where the designers work in such fancy offices and everyone working there is so stylish and fashionable. But honestly, from my working experience, it was nothing like that. I'm sure that there are jobs that are as glamorous as what is portrayed in the movies, but I am not blessed with such experiences. So if you are planning to go into fashion with the perception I had about the industry, I'm sorry to say this, but it is not as glamorous as what the media make it out to be, especially if you work for a smaller company. Semester breaks and proper rest isn't a thing for most inexperienced fashion students like me. When I went into fashion, I had no prior training or experience. There were some of my friends in college who has taken sewing and drafting classes beforehand, and they were really good at it from the get-go. Me, on the other hand, I couldn't sew a straight line to save my life when I first started out, and I made so many mistakes on my assignments, and they were really ugly, which resulted in me being slower than the rest. So most of my sem breaks were used to finish my final assignments, and sleep was also a luxury for me because I lived 2 hours away by public transport, sometimes 3 if there's a delay, which happened a lot. I also had a curfew in college and I had to return home as soon as my classes ended, which was around 6 to 6:30 p.m. So I didn't have time to stay back to finish my assignments, and I had to bring them home to finish. So by the time I'm home into my dinner, it would be around 9:30 p.m. and I'll be holding my ass off until 2:30 to 3 in the morning, and I had to wake up at 6 to get ready for class. You know, it was really hectic. Of course, this didn't happen for all my semesters. Life isn't so cruel, but it is a common occurrence. I would say around 8 out of 10 semesters. Yeah. So now let's move on to finance. Number 4, high expenditures. I enrolled in a rather expensive college in my country, and when we first went in for inquiries, the staff at the college assured us that there won't be much additional expenses, and if there were, it would be maybe less than $1,000. And that really sealed the deal for me because the fees for the course was already so expensive for that particular college, and hence I decided to enroll. When I first started my first semester, we already had to buy so many things, and if I'm not wrong, the extra $1,000 for assignments and stationery exceeded in the beginning of my second semester. There were just so many things we had to buy. For example, a ton of muslin for toiles, that French curve ruler, 5cm ruler, a specific brand of markers that was really expensive, fabric, digital printing, sewing toolbox, that trip to China to source for our materials for our final year project. There's just so much more which I can't really think of right now, but that's just on top of my head. So for draping classes, I try to design garments that didn't have much drape to them, to minimize the cost, because it's not my money, it's my parents' money, and I didn't want to use much of it since it was already so expensive. Internships are sometimes unpaid or minimum wage. I landed an internship with a local designer, and the whole experience was really good. I met with a lot of great people at the job. Although there were many trivial jobs, I did enjoy myself. But for 3 months of work, I was only paid $500, which barely covered my travel and food expenses. I don't even think it did cover my expenses. But I had one friend who worked there a little later than I did, and the company didn't want to pay her at all, but they did after she talked to them, and for 3 months of work she was only paid somewhere around $200 to $300, which is really low, and I'm sure that this varies from companies to companies. But this is just a little note to you that most internships are minimum wage. Super minimum wage. Talking about wages, let's move on to the final point. The starting salaries are really low. Even when you have already graduated, living the high of being done with assignments and sleepless nights, you will be hit by a huge dose of reality: low salary. I won't be going into the specifics of my earnings, but it definitely didn't feel worth the money that was put into my studies, the sleepless nights, tears, frustration, and effort. Of course, like I said, this is from my personal experience. Not everyone is faced with this, but majority of my friends who graduated from college with me experienced this. we've come to the end of the video. I hope this was helpful to at least one of you. Like I said, this is from my personal experience. It won't necessarily be the same for everyone. This is just some things I wished someone would have told me before I studied fashion, so I would know what to expect. The fashion industry isn't full of butterflies and glamour, but nevertheless, I do not regret taking this path. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below or DM me on Instagram. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to connect with me through Instagram. I have 2 accounts which I will link down below. My personal Instagram is @HiIt'sKimmy, and my digital illustration account is @KimmyScribbles. Hope to see you there. See you guys in the next video. Goodbye.